No mask. Isn't that exciting?
That is exciting news.
Yeah,
We're making progress.
We are making progress.
Yeah.
And the news in India, my gosh. How could somebody be anti-vax, not believe the science, and watch what's going on in India? It's incredible.
They dodged a bullet for a really long time, and
Yeah.
then it just shut up.
We were talking about that today. How could they not be ready for this? It's just amazing. Well, it's going to be a very interesting show, and we're going to go live to Toronto. That's exciting.
Let's do this.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 7 p.m., Tuesday, April 27th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. The world's first live daily queer evening news show, Out of the Closet and Into the Headlines on Q News Tonight. Well, thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you're going to see it. And this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. And let's begin by welcoming anchor Tony Lima. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Ariana's Center, Trans Latina Florida, one of the nation's most important trans rights and service organizations in America. He is a longtime South Florida LGBTQ activist and political advocate, as well as the anchor of the world's first new live weekly trans talk show with trans host called Translation. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, Al. So excited about Translation. We are counting the days to having our first show, so stay tuned for more information coming very soon.
It's very exciting. And let's welcome anchor Dr. Nick Metheny. He is an assistant professor at the University of Miami School of Nursing and Health Studies, as well as a registered nurse. His research focuses on preventing domestic violence and its negative health implications in LGBTQ populations globally. Good evening, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, April 27. Let's begin by queering up breaking Q news. The CDC guidance for LGBTQ America: to mask or not to mask. Watch this.
Earlier today, the CDC made an important announcement. Starting today, if you're fully vaccinated and you're outdoors, you need, and not in a big crowd, you no longer need to wear a mask. I want to be absolutely clear. If you're in a crowd, like a stadium or at a conference or a concert, you still need to wear a mask, even if you're outside. But beginning today, gathering with a group of friends in a park, going for a picnic, as long as you are vaccinated and outdoors, you can do it without a mask.
That is historic. First time you've heard that in 14 months. Oh, wait, in the last 100 days, because Donald Trump never said anything about masks. Well, President Joe Biden this afternoon in a live press conference on the White House lawn urged all eligible Americans to get vaccinated against the coronavirus, saying that the new guidance from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, easing certain restrictions for fully vaccinated individuals, is a great incentive for Americans to roll up their sleeves. Biden said, quote, "The bottom line is clear. If you're vaccinated, you can do more things more safely, both outdoors as well as indoors. So for those who haven't gotten their vaccination yet, especially if you're younger or thinking you don't need it, this is another great reason to go get vaccinated now." End quote. Before the president's remarks, the CDC issued new guidelines that say fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks at small outdoor gatherings or when dining outside with friends from multiple households. The CDC says unvaccinated people should still wear a mask at such gatherings. The Federal Health Agency still says that even if you've been vaccinated, you should avoid large indoor gatherings, and for the fully vaccinated who do choose to attend a crowded outdoor event, such as live performance, parade, or sporting event, wearing a mask is still recommended.
This sounds like a call to action to me to basically get vaccinated. There's so many people that are still waiting. There's so many people that are hesitating or uneducated about what's going on. And this should be like that last push to, hey, get your vaccine so you can start to live a normal life again.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a statistic that more than a third of white evangelicals are still hesitant to get the vaccine. And I'm hoping that if there are some incentives to be able to go out and do things like they would in the before times, that'll help push that down.
And Nick, I don't know if you know, a third of evangelicals is not the saddest number. The saddest number is 98% of the most conservative Republicans in Congress are probably not going to get vaccinated. I
That's
agree
fine.
with you.
Actually, they can check off.
Right. We could go lots of jokes there. I agree with you, Tony, though. I believe in the Mary Poppins philosophy from the 60s. A spoonful of sugar
Absolutely.
Helps the medicine go down. This is a call to action. If you want your life to return, get the vaccine.
This is what you have to do.
It's good for everyone.
And this is great for young people, because there's a lot of young people out there that aren't getting vaccinated because
They don't think they need to.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
They're invincible. Oh,
this
wait.
is the push.
We've heard this before.
We have.
LGBTQ community.
So with that, next we queer up entertainment. Tyler Perry compares LBGTQ people suffering homophobic abuse to the experience of being a cop. Watch this.
Refuse to hate someone because they are Mexican or because they are black or white or LBGTQ. I refuse to hate someone because they are a police officer.
Tyler Perry was awarded the Jean Herschel Humanitarian Award at the 93rd Oscars last night for his work helping people during the pandemic. In his speech, Perry called for people to refuse to hate. The LGBTQ social media exploded over his mistake of reversing the letters. People in the room didn't seem to notice, but those on Twitter certainly did, and they had a lot to say about it. They also had a lot to say about Perry denouncing hate when, according to them, so many of his films, plays, and TV shows contain homophobic stereotypes and gay jokes, dabble in transphobia, slut-shame women, vilify bisexual men, and stigmatize AIDS.
I get what he was going for, right? Like, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, great. But maybe don't include in the list a group of people whose entire existence is based on, catching black people who were running away from slavery, right?
Well, I think the really interesting component of this story is his focus. There are two notes, one of which is he reverses two letters. We've added all of those letters.
It's true.
We've added them. So instead of just saying gay or queer, we've got these 5 and now 7 and really, in some circles, 26 letters. We added them. For him to make a mistake in reversing the B and the G, to me, is inconsequential. For God's sakes, I have mispronounced Nick's name 1 out of 2 times.
2 out of 2 times.
Yeah.
A bunch of people's names. This is pervasive with Al.
Yes. Okay, so I give Tyler Perry a break. The second thing is, I think really what's interesting, regardless of which side of the fence you are on this story, with what I watched, and I read so many of these reports, or these tweets that were done about him, it's interesting to me that he does a speech that embraces our community, talks about he's tired of hate, and gets hate. And that was exactly what his point was. And we did it our own selves. That's what is really interesting, and we really should be self-reflective over, I think.
Agreed. I think there's this propensity to pounce without taking into context what's actually happening. If you watch him closely, he was a little bit nervous. So the reversing of the letters wasn't a big deal to me. And I think he just tried to be inclusive of everyone and really try to make that point that we shouldn't hate. That's what it was all about. So I take personally no issue with Tyler Perry. I thought it was a beautiful speech. It was off the cuff. It was natural. And I give him a lot of props for trying to be inclusive.
Yeah, and who hasn't misspoke?
Absolutely.
I misspoke
Sure.
all the time.
But I do have to say that I think this week especially, that was an especially hot topic with the Chauvin trial, and I wonder if it was just nervousness or what, if maybe that was on his mind.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, let's queer up gay culture. What's the difference between LGBTQ Gen Z and LGBTQ millennials?
Oh my.
LGBTQ comedian Michael Henry tackles one of the great questions of our time. What do you do when your friend starts dating a 21-year-old and you don't understand their cultural references? Queer News Tonight anchor Al Ferguson is legendary in his lack of understanding of Gen Zers and millennials. So when Henry expresses many of the same feelings in his new sketch titled I'm Dating a 21-year-old, well, we just had to show it to you. And Al. Check it out.
21-year-old.
With the booty scrub line?
Yeah, I think that he might be the one. What? What's the problem? You don't like him?
How do I say this? Your boyfriend's outdated.
It's like he learned how to be gay from a 1999 episode of Sex and the City.
Yeah.
Wait, how can it be outdated? He's 21 years old. He smokes cigarettes.
He called me a fat in Kmart clothes.
He threw a vodka soda in my face just because I said that Gopnik should have been in the bottom last week.
How do you even get a vodka soda at the park?
Right? He's sassy and femme, and he cares about fashion.
I love femme, but I don't like mean.
You're femme and mean.
So my friends. He's not my friend.
He's coming to drop off my charger. Quick, act young. TikTok?
Vape.
Hey, fish queefs.
Hi, baby.
Hi. Here's your Android charger. Yucky.
Cute outfit.
I know. I like yours too. It's the vintage Sears for me. We love a curvy queen.
It's Old Navy.
So, who do you guys think is going to win the finale?
Rosé or Simone, obviously. I mean, they have the most amount of... Would I be happy with anyone?
Well, I should get going. I'm headed to a soft ass meeting.
Soft as what?
Soft ass meeting? Turn up the miracle ear, grandma. Sorry, my K is wearing off.
My place later?
Period. Not me leaving already. Not me leaving right now.
Well, you know, does it say something about me that I laugh all the way through this, Michael Henry? I think you're very funny. But does it say something about me that Nick never laughs a single time as we watch this video? I just think it's interesting. Gen Zers, millennials, you've got a lot to prove. You've got a lot to prove. You got a lot to prove.
Do we ever give you that much crap when you date 21-year-olds? I don't think so. I think we're much nicer.
Wait, we'll talk after the show.
His case.
So many of my friends right now are texting me going, my God, if they only knew. And do you like Michael Henry? Or?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know who it is, but that guy was so annoying. Like, I was so annoyed, and I feel like I know too many people like that already, so I don't need to watch it.
Okay.
So he's saying that he's younger than we are, Al. That's what he's saying in a nutshell.
We have just lived out Michael Henry at the table.
At the
of Queer
table.
News Tonight. They were sitting around a picnic table. We're sitting around Queer News.
Yes,
table.
concept of modern living. It is.
Exactly. All right, well, next we're going to queer up South Florida. Join SAVE for a special evening with Chloe O. Davis, author of The Queen's English. SAVE will host an interesting one-hour book unveiling and discussion with the famous author Chloe O. Davis on Wednesday, April 28th at 5:30 p.m. The digital online event will include Chloe unveiling her book, The Queen's English, the LGBTQIA+ dictionary of lingo and colloquial phrases. Davis is a proud Black bisexual woman and the author who works in the entertainment industry in New York. She spent 15 years researching, writing, and creating The Queen's English. The book celebrates the origin and diversity of over 800 terms used to describe the collective gay and queer experience. The Queen's English is a great starting point for important conversations around inclusivity, sexuality, gender expression, and identity. You can participate in this amazing conversation by registering at SAVE, Safeguarding American Values for Everyone, at their website, save.lgbt.
This sounds like a really interesting book. I know it's going to be like that coffee table thing you have, and when your friends are over, you look at the book and see how true it seems to be. Hopefully it's given what just happened in the previous story, like it's generationally friendly, right? So that Nick's friends and our friends will sort of get it. But I think it's an interesting thing. I look forward to it. I wonder if the Queen herself is taking any issue with the title of this book.
Oh, you mean RuPaul?
I was thinking RuPaul. Yes.
Oh, that's not who I'm. Generational issues going on again around our little picnic table.
That's our theme.
Michael, Mary. Right.
I'm really interested. I would love to pick it up a copy because I feel like it's going to be like a history book, right? Like I remember the first time I learned about the handkerchief code back in the 60s and 70s, and I think I'm really looking forward to learning more about what I didn't know.
You know, I love that observation. If I didn't happen to know that you learning about the handkerchief code, you only learned about last week.
Well, and from like conversation or a book, I'm like, I remember people wearing the handkerchiefs in different places, right?
He just put it in his pocket.
We've done it. And he's just
well, he is too many people, Al. But on that note, let's queer up the world. Trans history. Reuters appoints Gina Chua as executive editor. Reuters, the world's largest multimedia news provider, announced today that Gina Chua has been appointed executive editor. Chua will continue to oversee editorial operations, budgets, administration, safety, and security, and will also be responsible for leading technology initiatives around new forms of reporting, broadening Reuters' file, and delivering more relevant reporting to new and existing customers. Chua was previously the editor-in-chief of the South China Morning Post and the Asian Wall Street Journal, or the Wall Street Journal Asia. She was previously a senior editor at the Wall Street Journal in New York, a reporter in Singapore, Manila, and Hanoi, and a television and radio journalist in Singapore. The news for the LGBTQ community is Chua's announcement is believed to be historic as the most important news person from the trans community in history. When Gina transitioned in late 2020, made her one of the most senior transgender journalists in the industry. This news for the LGBTQ community is now believed to be historic as Chua becomes the most important news person in the world from the trans community in history. I love this story.
What an accomplishment. I think this is incredible. And she was already a very accomplished journalist and reporter across the world. And so I'm really excited to see this develop.
You know, when you have on your resume senior editor of the Wall Street Journal or the senior editor for Wall Street Journal Asia, there is great credibility. And here for Reuters, you know, I just say from our little news organization in LGBT, to say you are now the director at Reuters, that is really a world-class position.
Absolutely.
From a news standpoint, you can't really say anything more than that. Reuters is at the very top of the list.
It's the top. It's absolutely the top, and she's Asian and transgender.
Yeah.
What an amazing story.
A world's changing.
But what I love about that is that Reuters is just a very good news organization. It's not a niche news organization.
That's right.
This is the best person for the job getting the job.
And you know what else is great about it? Reuters is not Fox News.
You don't watch Newsmax now?
Newsmax. Oh, your joke's better than my joke. Right.
Next, we queer up the USA. Manhattan will stop prosecuting sex workers, marking monumental step for trans advocates. Transgender advocates in New York are celebrating after the Manhattan District Attorney's Office announced it will no longer prosecute sex workers. Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance said, quote, "Over the last decade, we've learned from those with lived experience and from our own experience on the ground. Criminally prosecuting prostitution does not make us safer, and too often it achieves the opposite by further marginalizing vulnerable New Yorkers," end quote. The DA also announced approximately 6,000 prostitution-related open cases will be dismissed, including 900 cases dating all the way back to the 1970s. Cecilia Gentili, founder of Transgender Equity Consulting, said, quote, "This was one of the most nationally significant steps in the effort to stop criminalizing sex work. This resolute action to actively decriminalize sex workers is the kind of change our community has been hoping for, advocating for decades," end quote. As we have reported at Queer News Tonight, trans people, especially trans women of color, are more likely to engage in sex work. The National Transgender Discrimination Survey found nearly 11% of transgender Americans reported having participated in the sex trade, including almost 40% of Black respondents and a third of Latinos.
You know, it's interesting to me that your story, Nick, will be responded to in two different ways depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on. Like what we see in people of color and in the Black community, drugs, especially minor drug offenses like marijuana, have filled our jails and prisons with the Black community, and it was designed in a way to oppress that community. So it is for sex enforcement in New York and really all over the country in terms of how it affects people that are participating in sexual trade, but especially people in trans, because it's a vicious circle. We create a society where trans people literally cannot live. They can't eat, they can't get a job, they don't have adequate housing, so they must turn to sex work. 40%. Some statistics show now as high as 60% of people of color. So we force them into the sex trade and then we make it illegal and punish them. This news is really
it's huge. It's huge.
Huge.
It's something that we've been working on here in the state of Florida for a very, very long time with no end in sight. So this is hopefully the beginning of other cities and states, municipalities for that matter, taking this kind of action. I also love to see that Cecilia Gentili is quoted. She is one of those trans iconic advocates that's been around forever. Excellent. She also starred in Pose during the first and second season.
That's great.
As a pointed character. So Cecilia, we love you. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for chiming in on this because it's a very important story.
I just want to note that in addition to this being an incredible story, and it is, we don't want to both criminalize and stigmatize sex work, right? A certain percentage of the 40%, 33%, whoever, choose to do sex work as a profession, and I think that that also needs working on too. We need to change the social norms around what sex work is, why it's important, and how to do it safely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we've reported on coronavirus on every news broadcast since January 6, 2020.
Tonight we report the devastating effect of coronavirus on the American and worldwide LGBTQ communities in total cases and in deaths. We also provide hope of a new light at the end of this very long tunnel. As of tonight, more than 2,300,000 LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19, and more than 41,000 LGBTQ Americans have died from the coronavirus. As of today, more than 230 million vaccination doses have been administered in the United States.
That is our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out television network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale.
We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at the Sunshine in supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 people watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
I am Daniel Quintana, CFO of Domi Real Estate, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
And finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice for the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ allied partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Welcome to Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. For nearly a year, this segment has been unique in America, answering your LGBTQ community questions about our unique health needs. We are proud to have Queer News Tonight health anchor, Dr. Howard Grossman.
Dr. Grossman is an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment and was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He is a nationally recognized medical expert and proud member of our LGBTQ community. Good evening, Dr. Grossman.
Good evening.
Hi, Howard. Before we move to this week's questions, what are your thoughts over the week's health news? Big day at the CDC and on the White House lawn with the president. What was your reaction to what you saw and heard today and this week?
Well, I think the CDC is taking some steps to, help people who've been vaccinated to lead as close as we can get these days to a more normal life, which is, I think, really good. I think a lot of people have been pushing them to go further. I think they're taking baby steps, but they're all good steps. I do think that there needs to be increasing pressure on people who refuse to get vaccinated to see that they are going to be increasingly isolated in society in order to protect everybody else. We talk about the vaccine passport thing. I think the fact that the European Union is willing to talk about opening up again to Americans who've been vaccinated is fascinating, and I think is a harbinger of things to come. I can tell you, just last weekend, I went to meet a college friend of mine who was at a hotel here in Florida in Pompano. And when I pulled up to the gate, they asked for my vaccine card to prove that I had been vaccinated, or my test within 72 hours. So it's happening here as, already, that we're starting to see, people who have been vaccinated get to be back to more normal activities.
Howard, I want to ask a follow-up question to that. And hearing a little bit of an echo, it might be at your end, Howard, with
Probably.
the headset.
Echo.
Yeah, exactly. We're okay though. Did the hotel give you notice of that? Did you know, or when
No.
you were,
No. Apparently, they gave notice to the hotel guests. And so, my friend and all of her family who were there for a wedding had to submit things. No, I had no idea when I was going, and she didn't know until I got there.
And you just happened to have your vaccine?
No, I didn't. They gave. She managed to convince them that I was one of the first people vaccinated.
Yeah, and who you are in South Florida, right? All right, well, let's jump right into our questions, and we're going to start with Tony.
Before we jump into the question, I have to point out that Dr. Howard Grossman has never looked more handsome in this fantastic bow tie. Oh my God, you look great. Look at that.
Pretty good.
Thank you. I decided it's time to start putting the bow tie back for you guys.
Yeah. It looks good. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Dr. Grossman, I was a test subject for the AstraZeneca vaccine, but they suggested I get another vaccine as well. Is this normal?
Was this really you, Tony?
No.
No. It's a viewer question.
This was a viewer question. So when I saw the question, I wondered if perhaps the person was involved in a placebo-controlled trial. In that case, they might not know whether the person got the vaccine or
Howard,
placebo.
let me interrupt you just for clarity, because I happen to know the situation of the person that went through this, and they were not. They received AstraZeneca, but because it wasn't approved in the trial participation, the trial recommended that they get one of the approved vaccines.
I think that makes sense. The AstraZeneca vaccine still hasn't been approved in this country. Although apparently we have hundreds of thousands of doses of it here that we've been hoarding, that now we will ship to India.
Yeah. 30 million, I understand.
Wow.
Sorry?
30 million vaccinations.
30 million.
Right. Yeah.
And,
so you don't think it was unusual to have taken AstraZeneca and then be told, well, you should do Moderna or Pfizer or whatever?
I think they're probably protecting themselves. I mean, since it isn't of approved vaccine here, I think the person could certainly test for the spike antibody. That is a test that's available through the regular laboratories. If the numbers are high enough, they might decide not to go ahead and get another vaccine.
Yeah, they ended up getting, they got another vaccine. All right, Nick.
I don't think it would hurt them. I mean, these vaccines are pretty benign. People do have some side effects, and clearly there are people who have had more than others, but very few for the most part. I think for our viewers really to understand, with all this medical stuff, when you read stuff online, the only people who complain are the people who have problems. The people who don't have problems don't complain.
Yeah, they don't.
So it may seem that there are lots of reactions, but in my patient population, most of the people come in and say, "Oh, I had a sore arm for for a night."
And before we move to Nick on the next question, we just have to echo what we reported yesterday. The CDC released all of the statistics, current statistics, of approaching 100 million fully vaccinated Americans, and a breakthrough infection sits at a little over 5,000, meaning they got COVID after being fully vaccinated. Only approximately 400 got hospitalized with serious symptoms and needed hospitalization management, and only 84 people have died. Over nearly 100 million fully vaccinated. It's a miracle. This vaccine is a miracle.
And don't forget, some of those people got COVID very soon after their second vaccine, some in that 2-week window. And the vaccine was never said to be 100% effective. It's 95% effective in preventing serious illness and death. That's not the same as not getting infected.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And
so going on to that question, or going off of that question, another viewer asked, I got my first vaccine dose, but not the second. Is that important?
I think it's very important, because that first vaccine dose will protect you about 68%, maybe a little bit more. If you really want to get that full protection, you need to take the second dose. Now, that said, there is some evidence that people who had serious COVID infection previously and have high antibody levels may only need one dose. I actually was doing a webinar with a doctor from Italy last week, and she said that in Italy, for people who previously had COVID, they are only giving a single dose. That's not what's approved here, but it's like, again, the antibody levels are measurable, so you could do that.
Howard, I've got to jump in. You and I know from the very beginning in March of 2020 when we started this, we started by giving Donald Trump, I ask you every single week, give Donald Trump a grade, and it moved from C- to D to F to can I give him a Z? You remember those days. We're here now 12 months later, and it appears from my seat in watching what's going on in the world that literally America has become one of the leading places, especially for large population nations, has become one of the leading success stories in COVID-19 in the world. Do you have that same reaction?
Well, in COVID-19 vaccination, it pays to be the richest country in the world. Let's face it. The manufacturers are here, many of them, the production facilities are here, and we've been holding on to as much vaccine as we can. The government bought so much vaccine. So, you want a grade for the administration. I give them an A-, B+, but part of that is complicated. I think they've done a fantastic job in ramping up vaccines, in getting more people access, and really rolling this out. So that's an A+, really. But I think the downside is that we should be forcing compulsory licensing on the pharmaceutical companies. They made these vaccines, much of it with our money in their pockets. They shouldn't be making a profit from it. They should have to license these vaccines around the world. We're just starting to see some of that happen, as of yesterday when they promised to send materials to make vaccine. But they need to let these other countries make vaccine. You know, today in Brazil was reported that they were looking at getting the Russian vaccine because they're desperate for vaccine. They shouldn't have to do that. The Russian vaccine has production problems. The research is poorly documented, and we have stuff that works. We should be helping a country like Brazil to overcome this. So that's where I think we're failing a little bit. And plus, I think we still haven't figured out how to get that 40% of people that refuse to get vaccinated, and how to convince them that they need to be.
Absolutely. Well, that's COVID, and we have another question, Tony, and it's not COVID. Yay!
Our final viewer question. I heard STD rates are going up. Is that because people are getting out after quarantine, or do you think it's from something else?
Well, let's face it, STD rates were getting really high before all this started. I think because people were more comfortable having sex, because HIV has been under control to a great extent for many people with access to medicines. And I think a lot shut down during the worst part of the pandemic, but people certainly are getting out there having sex again. There's no question about it. I mean, even my 70-year-olds are having more sex in the last couple of weeks since they got vaccinated.
For them.
Good for them, right. I was sitting there, as long as they wear a condom, great. Yeah. So it's directly related to activity. It's not anything that...
Yeah, there's nothing new going on as far as syphilis goes. There's nothing more virulent. I mean, I think again, we've talked about it multiple times, Tony, right, that people need to be aware that there are resistant variants of gonorrhea. We stand the risk in the next few years of losing the drugs that we have. The treatment for gonorrhea, by the way, changed in the last couple of months, and now it's just an injection of ceftriaxone, 500 milligrams, rather than what we used to do, which was give 250 with either doxycycline or Zithromax. So now we just give the ceftriaxone for gonorrhea, but we really worry about those resistance issues.
Yeah. Okay. Well, excellent information tonight. That is tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ health and the pandemic. We're here every Tuesday night with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your questions. Need medical assistance? And of course, we're LGBTQ community. We are always centrically aware of that. We encourage you to contact Midway Specialty Care Center with 10 locations across Florida, and especially Dr. Howard Grossman here in Wilton Manors and all across South Florida. Thank you again tonight, Howard.
Thanks, Al. I missed you last week.
I know. I missed you too. We'll have a dinner date soon. All right. Well, next up, the Outshine LGBTQ Film Festival is sponsoring tonight's episode. Happening on Television Network serves as the premier sponsor for the 23rd annual Outshine Film Festival, happening now through May 2nd. You can purchase your tickets and passes now at outshinefilm.com. Watch this.
Get your tickets now for the 23rd annual edition of the Outshine LGBTQ Plus Film Festival, happening April 23rd to May 2nd. Don't miss our incredible grand opening drive-in event, followed by 10 days of non-stop films from here and all around the world that you can watch at home. Watch trailers and get your tickets at outshinefilm.com now.
Queer News Tonight is proud to showcase many of the film directors during the 23rd annual Outshine LGBTQ Plus Film Festival. Tonight, we are pleased to feature the film On the Fringe of Wild.
On the Fringe of Wild follows the romance between teenage boys Peter and Jack as they wrestle with their sexuality, mental health, and the toxic family dynamics that threaten to drive them apart. A 2000s Romeo and Juliet type romance set in a small northern Canadian town where love does not win, but the surviving players grow up to accept themselves as members of the LGBTQ plus community.
Joining us tonight is Emma Catalfamo. She is an award-winning filmmaker with extensive artistic interests. She is interested in telling unique stories, and her previous cinematic works have dealt with themes such as addiction, mental illness, unexpected pregnancy, and toxic masculinity, as well as the generally oppressive nature of gender roles.
To tell us more about On the Fringe of Wild, virtually playing at the Outshine LGBTQ Film Festival this Wednesday, April 28th through Sunday, May 2nd, is Emma Catalfamo. And Emma, welcome to Queer News Tonight.
Hi there.
Well, we're very happy to have you. We tell our audience, of course, you're LGBTQ, a member of our community, coming to us from Toronto. We love Canada and our cousins to the north. Emma, I understand. Let's get right into the film before we talk about the film festival and your integration in it. I understand that this is your first feature film. And sitting in April of 2021, you just heard our segment that we've done on COVID-19. We've done a lot of news today in this broadcast about pandemic and COVID-19. I imagine the creation of this film, your first feature film, in the process of pandemic and what we've all gone through in the last 14 months, it was quite trying. Tell us what it was like to create this film in that.
Well, Al, I mean, it was quite an experience. I mean, everything essentially was going as normal, pre-production, even production itself. We came up to North Bay, Ontario, which is where the film was shot, and we shot there for 2 weeks in the Canadian winter. But as soon as we got back to Toronto, which is where I'm from, that was near the middle of March, and a few days later, essentially the entire country went into lockdown. So we basically had returned the props and the art department materials and the equipment, and then we were locked down in quarantine. It was quite surreal.
I can't even imagine for a creative person that is trying to create art and then have no access to the ability to do that or to the people that they need around them to accomplish that. Tell us, so you completed the filming, you struggled through, you've struggled through the time of pandemic. Tell us a bit about the film, its inspiration, the story that you were trying to tell.
Absolutely. Well, the story is a love story between two closeted homosexual teenage boys living in a very small, very close-minded town in Northern Ontario. And these boys are essentially struggling with this, oppressive environment. And because of that, they struggle with their mental health as well. I was inspired by it inspired to tell this story rather, because I found out essentially that despite all the advances that have been made in the community in the last 15, 20 years, the LGBTQ community is still one of the largest demographics to suffer from mental health issues, especially youth, and especially in regards to depression and suicide attempts. So this is something that I wanted to explore. I think that it makes a huge difference, in the lives of a child or a tween or a teenager, in those formative years, to have, people in their lives, their parents or members in society, basically, giving them acceptance and letting them know that it's okay for them to be themselves and accept themselves. And if they don't have that kind of support, I mean, it's proven in the statistics that it has, terrible, terrible results.
Emma, let me try to help South Florida audience understand, LGBT audience understand. By the way, your film's title, On the Fringe of Wild, is beautiful. And for South Floridian LGBT, it's kind of hard to understand where you filmed, the remoteness of the wildness of where you filmed in Canada. We remind South Florida, we have an LGBTQ community here in South Florida of 300 to 400,000 people in estimates. Canada's population is 1/10 of the United States and is larger in geographic landmass in the mainland than the United States, with 1/10 of the population. And you have this vast north this vast white north. And so when you get out and the farther north you travel into rural remote, it is the antithesis of what South Floridian LGBT thinks of as civilization. And isolation
Absolutely.
grows and grows and grows. And that's the intent of On the Fringe of Wild. That's the story you're telling right in your title, which is absolutely outstanding. When you finished the film and you started to try to put it together in pandemic, and you finished, was it something doing your first feature film? I know you've done a lot of shorts. You've participated in film festivals, especially LGBTQ film festivals. Was it something that you said, gosh, I'm so happy I've done this feature even in these circumstances? Or is it something you would have gone, gosh, I really wish I wouldn't have taken this on? What was your conclusion as we're at the point now that it is completed?
I mean, absolutely, I would say, the first thing that you said, when we finished the project, I was so happy that we had been able to complete it. And I mean, yes, of course, there are some repercussions because of the environment that we're all living in, the COVID circumstances. Yes, it's hard. We can't have, a traditional theater exhibition perhaps, but it doesn't mean that we can't have exhibition at all. And I mean, the project was really my saving grace because it kept me completely occupied throughout the whole pandemic. Otherwise, up until now, of course. But otherwise, I would have just been going stir crazy at home.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's what I was pursuing. The silver lining in all of this is it really gave you some life. While all the rest of us were watching reruns of The Price is Right because it wasn't filming anymore, you were actually out there creating art and continuing to pursue your project. You said something that's very interesting to me. I know in your shorts that you've participated in many LGBTQ and independent film festivals. What is your experience like in doing it this time, like with Outshine? Outshine is unique because it's one of the most important LGBTQ film festivals in the country, especially because it's done in 2 locations and 2 times. In the spring, it's done in Miami, Dade County, and then in late summer, early fall, it's done in Broward County and Fort Lauderdale. What was it like for you to come to this film festival in a unique way and do it digitally? Did you just think, oh my goodness, I don't even have concept of how this is going to work? Or did you just jump both feet in and go, we're going to make it work?
I mean, I guess I wasn't exactly sure how things would work because of pandemic circumstances, but that definitely didn't deter me. I mean, I was just as excited as, I would have been, I think, if it was under, normal circumstances, because I was just happy to be, or am happy to be a part of the festival. And I essentially, I think as a creator, the most important thing is just to get your work out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if it's in a theater or if it's online. It's just, having an audience, right?
It's interesting that you say that, because we say at Queer News Tonight over and over and over again in so many of our stories, symbols and visibility matters. No matter what, the visibility matters. We wish you all of the luck. Again, it's going to be a fascinating film to watch as a feature. On the Fringe of Wild. Think of northern Russia, but it have American feel, Canadian American feel, but that's what you're going to see in the locations of the Fringe of the Wild, of literally what is the Great White North of your filming in the winter. We also have to tell you, on behalf of all of the South Florida LGBTQ community, Toronto is one of the great cities in the world for the LGBTQ community. We love your city.
Oh,
we
thank
love
you.
Canadians, and, we're absolutely thrilled that you're with us. And all the luck.
Feeling is mutual.
Yes, and all of the luck in this film, Emma, on the Fringe of Wild. Everyone, check out Outshine Film Festival, and you're going to be able to see the film on demand digitally in the coming days. And Emma, thank you so much for being with us tonight at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you all. Bye.
Alrighty.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
If it is, then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, and share this news. We are the only LGBTQ television live video news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. And we need your support.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of anchors Tony Lima and Dr. Nick, I'm just going to leave it that way, make sure I get it right. We will see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m.